It's the name of the facility. Okay, but Milila number 1, Millennium Heights Medical Complex. But
Mais il parle l'hôpital encore. C'est un complexe.
Yes, it's still a hospital. It is a complex and more. So what you have to understand is l'hôpital là, c'est pas l'hôpital là tout seul. So you need wellness center là. Okay, EUH là tout.
Okay.
Vous comprenez ça moi kadou là? Yo ka bay moun training ek bagay la. Yo nan shay bagay ka fait là. So it is a complex. The entire facility.
So let me finish là, moi c'est aller Victoria Hospital, c'est still a complex là. Si rien arrive moi.
Non, Gonzague, mais c'est ben yo ka un problème pour us hein. Gonzague, so right now VH falls under the portfolio of the complex. Again, that's another part of the hospital. You understand of the Millennium Heights complex. So Yonisa you deka kriye wellness center la talk.
La talk, oui.
Oui, well c'est wellness center ça là. OK, EUH là.
Mais est-ce que ça aller en pièce directement?
Non. You will have to be referred. Bon, c'est pour ça you need to but I'm not qualified to give that explanation.
I see.
Okay?
I see.
So if you sit and you
so
listen.
You can discuss.
Oh yes, tonight they will be discussing that among other things.
Okay.
Vous savez l'autre bail you can discuter encore soir. Gonzague, if your head is hurting you, go to the primary health care, health center, la polyclinique là. Ce qui m'a c'est vie tu voulais aller.
Parce que monsieur là moi habiter aller.
Oh, Joseph, you got any problem with it? Well, I am telling you from now, you cannot just go to VH. They have to refer you.
Well,
you understand?
Okay, you?
Amal te tourni Gonzague ale be bon fenzi ke ben bagay be al un health center.
So pour qui ça l'hôpital là?
Il là pour bagay qui plus. So all those questions could be addressed, Gonzague.
I see.
And you have asked some good questions tonight. The name of the facility,
yes.
Millennium Heights Medical Complex. So l'hôpital c'est pas whole facility. The hospital is only part.
So dis-moi, qu'est-ce qui a fait complexe là?
Well, but Gonzague, you went to school on Sundays and came out on Saturdays.
Well.
Number 4, the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. Why? 4.
Okay.
Yes, has 4 facilities.
Yes.
OK, EUH. C'est l'hôpital là. OK. Turning Point.
C'est
pour Gonzague. Yes, Gonzague.
Yes.
There you wellness center.
Wellness center.
There you go.
Right.
Explain about if you are referred, so you have to go to the hospital, which is OKEU.
Right.
And then you'll get a referral.
Okay.
But that will be addressed in the town hall meeting. There you go. So c'est la MHMC sorti, the medical complex.
All right. Okay. Well, what the lot question in our meeting now?
Okay. So, bon, Gonzague, yon pli bagay ka discuter ou sav. Yon nan bagay la, yo kouye chartered patients of heights. C'est ça qui là comme rights. Oh, Jésus a mauvais tellement comme
And
ça.
responsibility, ça veut dire.
Okay. So, another reason you should come to the town hall meeting. So, in essence, what it is saying, as a patient, when you come to the hospital, you have rights too. And whoever is coming to you have to understand they are dealing with a patient. And so you have to say who you are, responsibility, and accountability.
So you can faire by primaire.
There you go.
About that.
And that's right. So that is why we are having the town hall meetings, Gonzague.
Yes.
So when people come in, they could ask questions.
Yes.
You understand?
Yes.
So with policies and systems in place like that. Moi, si vous avez une question pour dire, why we have so many people in the hallways? That will be answered and addressed. Why is it we have less beds? That will be addressed.
Yes.
And that is why it is so important that the community comes to give an impact and listen and ask questions. You understand, Gonzague?
Well, tenir plus moun ici soir pour yo s'attendre. Ça qu'a fait.
Well, so they vle pli moun, tout ça ou teni pou fè se mene Glacia is a whole population. Glacia alone is a population, so you te sa mene la. So you understand what is happening, Gonzague. So, or swear you vle moun mande question, you vle moun buy advice, conseil, and this is the purpose of us moving forward. Bon, ou sa pou moun ki kay fè présentation? CEO.
CEO?
Oui.
Ici, à Oswald?
Oh yes, Gonzague. Si ou bien fait.
Dis-moi ça pour mettre sous moi.
Non. Nous, des aïons qui bien dressés, qui n'est quoi vote nous ici à Oswald. Moi, ça, si ou ça. Well, devenir quoi vote, moi, de ces compagnies qui valent. So, he's not even part of it. So, this is the basic essence of what is happening here tonight. So, Glacia dit, moi, vais pour essayer l'année manger. Pour venir là, mais ils sont ni glo, yo kay bay glo. OK. Là na bay, na di Glacia oui, gozile yo teni bagay. Ils sont oui, la kay ni bagay.
OK.
But this is a very good initiative. Ek moi content là. And do not go to VH.
Non, OK. Est-ce que encore dit moi Maltête m'a passé?
Go to the primary health care.
Maltête l'a passé, plus information à bay là.
There you go, Gonzague. Ek l'autre quoi Gonzague, on est quand t'es coulé en là ou pas venir meeting ces moun là.
Pas briser père pour sa course.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, Cooks and Company, for that interlude. We now begin our program and get into the meat of the matter. And to start our program this evening, we invite the presence of our Lord by calling on Pastor Clement Edward to pray with us this evening. So I ask you all to stand. Those of us who sign ourselves, may we do so. And Pastor Clement.
Thank you, Dave. Dear God, how are you today? We have come and we call upon you, O God, to let you know that we are grateful and thankful that you have allowed us all here to be alive. Lord, we thank you. Then, God, we have also come because you have said in your book, the Bible, your word, that it is your desire and your wish that we all prosper and be in good health. So, Lord Jehovah, I am glad for the work of the Million Heights Complex, or AKU as we know it, and the officers who have invited us here to hear and to know of the services that some of us can have and that we can be in good health. Father, through Yeshua, we thank you for teaching us to put all things together because you taught us to pray together with me. Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread, and forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. In Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Thank you very much, Pastor Edward. We now call on our chairperson, Mrs. Joanna Reynolds Atherton, to make a small series of opening remarks to you and to start off our meeting and basically just tell you about the direction that this meeting will take and also the board and the plans that they have put in place for the Millennium Heights Medical Complex.
Good evening, everyone. Cox and his partner gave a brief synopsis of part of what it is that we're going to do here tonight. And I just want to add a little to that. Why are we having these meetings? Really, it's an effort to demonstrate public leadership and openness in the governance of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. It is an effort, our aim really is to engage the public on matters related to the operations of the complex and to get your insights and recommendations for improving the service that we deliver to the public. So really, this is about bringing power back to the people, finding ways to allow the public to be part of the process of delivering improved service. So in short, it's about giving the public a voice. This evening, you'll also get an opportunity to hear from the CEO and the members of his management team as it relates to our achievements and our challenges in the short existence of the complex. And in case you don't know, MHMC has only been in existence for some 2.5 years. Let me just tell you a bit about the board of which I am the chair. The board was installed 2 years ago, and it has been very busy understanding its role and its functions while addressing matters of strategy and policy to guide the work of the management team. I want to just touch on 5 initiatives that the board has engaged in over the past 2 years. So after the former CEO had resigned, we set about to engage someone to replace that individual. So we actively pursued the recruitment of a CEO. And in late October 2022, we hired Dr. Dexter James, and he'll be speaking after me. So let me just tell you a bit about Dr. James. He has a wealth of experience in managing hospitals across the region. He has been in this business for over 20 years. He's a trained healthcare administrator, a professional accountant, and one of the leading experts in health reforms in the region. Our other initiatives center on board governance. So with the board, there's been the appointment of a number of standing committees. So on the board, we have a finance and audit committee, staffing and compensation committee, and a quality and patient services committee. All of these committees are led by board members, and we also get support from subject matter experts within our management team. Another initiative has been hospital accreditation. And the question you might ask is, what is accreditation? Accreditation is really about achieving standards of excellence. And in this case, it is about hospital excellence in hospital services. I will not go too deep into this because the CEO will give you more details. There's also the development of the Millennium Heights Secondary Care Hospital. And you heard Cox mention Victoria Hospital. This no longer exists. It became the Respiratory Hospital, which no longer exists. The facility will be serving 2 purposes. The Secondary Care Hospital, which will be managed by MHMC, and the Castries Urban Polyclinic. Now, you shouldn't do. They will serve 2 different purposes. The Castries Polyclinic is an urgent care center, and the secondary hospital would provide additional services to augment what we have at the OKEU. So these additional beds will help to alleviate the acute bed shortage that we have at the OKEU hospital. We have engaged in implementation of a number of capital projects. One, if you haven't heard about the oxygen plant, you will soon hear about it in the news. The oxygen plant at the complex will be commissioned sometime towards the end of this month. Over the years, health facilities in St. Lucia have spent large sums purchasing oxygen, but we'll be producing our own oxygen. So at that plant, we'll be producing as much as 60 bottles of oxygen per day. And that is more than enough to serve the complex, to serve other health facilities, and also for us probably to sell to gain some sort of revenue. We also have another project, the laundry project. Right now, our laundry services are outsourced. So the laundry will soon be commissioned, and we'll be getting those services in-house and cutting operational costs, which are quite high right now. There's also another project involving the installation of a backup generator, and we have works planned mold remediation works in the various wards. Finally, I just want to talk about another initiative, the 24-hour hospital operations. So finally, steps are being taken to restructure our clinical support services so that departments such as the lab, X-ray, and dispensing services will operate on a 24-hour basis. So there's recruitment of staff to facilitate that ongoing. So there'll be no longer the need to have staff being called out in the middle of the night or at any time to provide those services. So with these little tidbits of information that I've shared, I want to thank you for your time and for listening, and to assure you that our CEO will provide much more detail than I have. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Joanna Reynolds Atherton, chairperson of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. Right now, I'm sitting in for Lisa Joseph, who unfortunately could not be here this evening, and we're doing a sit-down interview with the CEO. So CEO, if you will join me, let's talk medicine. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for joining us. We took a difference this evening and wanted to do a sit-down interview. And we have with us Dr. Dexter James. He is the CEO, as you would have heard from our chairperson, of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. CEO, you have a presentation. A lot of people have questions. I have questions for you. The Cook's presentation presents the idea that there may not be a lot of knowledge and understanding surrounding the medical complex and what happens there. So tonight we hope that through the presentation of this slide and this interview, this discussion, we can actually bring some clarity to everyone in the audience and also our people joining live on Facebook and on YouTube right now. So my first question for you is, why would MHMC want to hold this meeting here this evening? What is the purpose of this sit-down interview? Why is this important?
Right. So thank you, Dave. Pleasant good afternoon to Castries. Pleasant good afternoon to Castries. I come to you this afternoon as Chief Executive Officer of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex with a measure of sincerity and truth. I'm here this afternoon to speak with you and to share with you some insights as to who or what we are as the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, and to glean feedback from you on ways in which we could improve the quality of care we provide to the people of St. Lucia. The setting up of the Millennium Heights Medical Complex is indeed a new type of governance arrangement to bring a higher level of accountability to the people. Our health systems have been developed where we pretty much have been self-serving. We provide services to you, take it or leave it. The move towards a new governance arrangement, as the chair alluded to earlier on, is to bring a measure of openness, a measure of accountability, It is admitting as well that we don't have all the answers to improving the quality of care, and to engage the public in a very meaningful way as to how we could improve the low and tertiary care facility in this country. My presentation focus this afternoon will take a critical look at who we are as the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. I will share with you some services at a glance, share with you as well some challenges that we encounter, speak to the very sensitive area of accident and emergency department, the development of the secondary care hospital, and our strategic focus going forward. The art form of governance is about accountability. And this afternoon, our board and certainly senior management is demonstrating not only a higher level of accountability, but the whole question of public leadership in the development of the services at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. This video will just give you an insight as to who or what we are and what comprises the Millennium Heights Medical Complex.
Did you know that Millennium Heights Medical Complex comprises a hospital, mental health institution, and a rehabilitation center? When the COVID-19 pandemic started in 2020, Victoria Hospital's operations were moved to the building of the OIP Hospital and was then merged with the National Mental Wellness Center and Clinical Rehabilitation Center into one organization, now known as Millennium Heights Medical Complex, or MHMC. This was started by the Millennium Heights Medical Complex Act of 2015, which officially allows for the government to set up MHMC and its responsibility for its administration, management, and organization, led by a board of directors. Together, these three institutions on one compound now offer a wide range of services in the country, making MHMC St. Lucia's main healthcare institution. Call MHMC at 458-6500 or 458-6700, or you can email information at nhmc.lc for more. Follow us on Facebook and LinkedIn for updates at Millennium Heights Medical Complex and on Instagram at Millennium Heights Medical.
Thank you for that. CEO, could you provide us with some key metrics on the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, some of the outcomes associated with the complex?
Sure. So the facility is a tertiary care facility comprising three main facilities. There's the OKEUH, as we know it, it's 122 beds. There's a National Mental Wellness Center of 103 beds. There's a Turning Point Rehabilitation Center with 8 beds. We provide a wide range of clinical, medical, diagnostic, and therapeutic services to the population of St. Lucia. It is indeed a tertiary care facility second to none. Our services at a glance gives you a sense of almost a did-you-know moment. We admit almost 6,000 patients a year. We see about 15,000 patients in our outpatient clinics. And we have about 94 patients today on hemodialysis treatment, each receiving 4 hours of treatment per day. In terms of annual throughput, number of diagnostic investigations done is about 19,000. X-rays, CTs, ultrasounds. In terms of laboratory investigations, over 500,000 studies are done. So these metrics give you a sense of how busy the facility is. We also measure something called what I call the happiness factor of our constituents. We have persons on our wards, at the accident and emergency department, and in our outpatient clinics, who meet with patients on a regular basis and ask them some pointed questions about the quality of care provided to them. That information is fed into a business intelligence software, and we get real-time information about how happy the constituents feel about the services we provide. This is the data that we have as of September, and you would see that we scored an average of about 3.7 rating, which rates between average and good. But the important feature here is we measure something called the Net Promoter Score. And what that Net Promoter Score is, for all the persons who have come to the facility, we ask them the pointed question. To what extent you would recommend the OKEUH hospital to your friend or relative or otherwise? And you would see here, 3 out of 4 persons that we've spoken to have said, in spite of all the issues that we have, will recommend the OKEUH to their relatives. That, in a sense, gives us a feeling that we're producing a good product. Do we rest on our laurels? Certainly not. We know there are many, many issues that the public have, and we really want to hear from the public ways in which we could improve on that score by empowering you to say to us how you see the services being delivered. So we measure this routinely. We measure this on a monthly basis, and we take stock on what is happening in our inpatient setting, in our outpatient setting, and what is happening in the accident and emergency department.
Right. Now, you talked about 6,000 patients a year. You talked about 500,000 or 250,000 going through certain key areas. My question for you, with all of this busyness, as you mentioned, what are some of the challenges that you face at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex?
Well, before I get into it, I just want to share this slide with you to give you a sense of what our expenditure profile is. We expend close to $90 million a year to deliver the package of services to the population. And this is one of the reasons why we must come to the taxpayers of this country and explain to them how their hard-earned dollars are spent, and hear from you ways in which we could improve the performance. $90 million is what we spend today to provide a package of services to the people of St. Lucia. Some of our challenges is built around the fact that we still have the issue around shortage of nurses and the attrition rate. We have the issue of care provided in the wrong setting, and what I mean by that is that there are about 25% of the patients who present to our emergency rooms really should be receiving care in a different setting. And the setting really should be at our polyclinic network. When they present to our emergency rooms for non-urgent care, it means we have to divert resources to take care of these patients, and therefore genuine patients who present with emergency conditions, we are not able to deal with those patients in the time frame that we would like to. Of course, the whole question of the sustainable financing model. This has to evolve to be able to sustain the package of services we provide to the population of St. Lucia. To digress a little bit, I want to spend a little time on this slide. This graph explains what we consider to be the continued widening gap between the demand for and cost of health services and the availability of resources. Between there is the gap. The question is, how do we address that gap in financing? And let me explain to you what happens. The disease profile of the country is one of those main drivers of the demand for and cost of health services. Changes in our demographic profile. We have an aging population. The very sickness profile that we ask to manage is also a key factor. And did you know, moment, 2 out of every 5 St. Lucians have hypertension. 2 out of 5, every 5. There are about 23% of the population between the ages of 18 and 69 have diabetes. Today, 94 patients on hemodialysis consume close to $4 million of our limited budget, close to 8%. These are serious drivers of our healthcare costs that creates this widening gap between the demand for and the cost of health services. The issues around incidents from accidents and violence is a very troubling public health issue. Between January to date, we've seen close to 250 patients present to our emergency rooms relating to injuries from accidents and violence. It's a big problem for us. So when we have to divert resources to take care of those public health issues, it increases our costs and creates this widening gap between the demand for and cost of services. Bear in mind, the supply side is not increasing. Our economies are not growing. Donor aid has pretty much remained the same or non-existent. And there continues to be public expectations about a higher package of services. People are watching television and are seeing all the fancy gadgets. And there's this higher demand for an expectation of the complex to provide the same kind of services. There are some factors which economists call exogenous factors. We do not control the cost of medical supplies, drugs and medical supplies. Therefore, we are forced to be what we call price takers. 17 to 20% of our expenditure profile, we have absolutely no control over it. Whatever the drug manufacturers say is the cost for drugs and medical supplies, we simply have to bear the cost. And so therefore, those are factors outside our control that we really cannot pass on to our patients. There are systemic factors relating to waste and inefficiencies. We must become more efficient as a public health institution. The fact that our doctors practice defensive medicine means that we have to put in place malpractice insurance to make sure we could mitigate any litigations that will come our way. Today, your Millennium Heights Medical Complex spends about $630,000 EC dollars annually for medical malpractice insurance. And we have to spend it because things can go wrong, and in the event a suit is brought against us, we have a way of recouping some of those funds going forward. As I mentioned earlier on, the question of high public expectations, that there's an entitlement, and therefore there's the expectation that we provide this higher level of care to our population.
Right. Now, in Cook's presentation with his friend, the friend wanted to go to VH because he had a headache for two days. The chairperson spoke about the secondary care hospital and explained why the change, and she also alluded to the Castries Polyclinic. My question to you is, could you zero in on the emergency accident and emergency department and give us some kind of reference as to how it functions when we look at what Cooks explained with the Victoria Hospital and also what came from our chair? If you don't mind zeroing on that.
So the accident and emergency department tends to be the face of most public health institutions. In the same way that post-COVID, the tourism sector is seeing what I would call pent-up travel demand. At the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, we're seeing a similar phenomena, but not necessarily travel. What we're seeing is pent-up sickness demand. A lot of patients who were pre-diabetic are now presenting in a fully blown diabetic state. Patients who were pre-hypertensive are presenting in a hypertensive state. But I just want to share with you one of the techniques that we use in the accident emergency department to be able to sort out patients in the way they present to the department. Many times we speak about this question of triage. And we use the term glibly, triage. But what does triage really mean? Triage is simply a sorting of patients based on the medical condition. It is not a first come, first served basis. And let me see how I could demonstrate it. Here it is, you have 5 patients who have presented to the emergency room. Patient number 1 comes in at 9:30 with a runny nose and chest congestion. You don't have runny nose, do you? Runny nose and congestion. Patient number 2 comes in with an upset stomach. Bad upset stomach. She came in at 10:15. Don't let it go here. Patient number 3 comes in with a referral letter from her physician saying, these headaches have been going on for far too long. I think you need to go to the hospital to find what's going on with you. Excruciating headache. She comes in at 10:50. Patient number 4 comes in at 11:30 with stab wounds. And patient number 5 comes in at noon, serious trauma, motor vehicle accident. This is the order in which the patients have come in. What triage does is that we have very experienced nurses who will look at this condition and say, which of these conditions do we see first, second, third, fourth, and fifth? It is based on the acuity of the condition. Clearly, the vehicular accident that came in at noon will be the first person that we will see. Everybody understand that? We must see them first. The one who's coming with the stab wound who's coming fourth, we must see them second. The one who's coming with the headache, we're not sure if it's a migraine headache or it might be a query stroke or intracranial bleed. So you know what? We got to see them afterwards and run some CT. So we see them third. The upset stomach, we don't know if she's drank some liquid or whatever it is, so we'll see her fourth. And running nose could continue to run, we will see her fifth. You see how the order has changed. This is the order in which the patients will be seen. The unfortunate reality in our setting is that these 2 persons, because they've come in before these other 3, believe that they should be seen first. This is not how an emergency department functions. In fact, as Cox mentioned earlier on, these 2 patients should really be seen at the primary care level. If they were seen at the primary care level, the resources that we now have to put towards managing these patients, we could now divert them to these 3 patients. Do you understand? So when we reorder the priority, these are the ones who remain in the waiting area and grumble and complain. They're staying too long in the hospital. But understand that we have to use those resources to take care of these. He's running to the theater right now. We have to stabilize him straight to the theater. This one is maybe under observation theater as well. This one is in A&E, and nurses have to monitor them to make sure that, get the CT done, get blood works done to make sure there is not an intracranial bleed. While all of that is going on, these 2 patients must wait. And this is what is not understood properly in the emergency room. It is not a first come, first served basis. It is based on the severity of the medical condition that you present with, and therefore care is provided to you. So,
this person comes in at 9:30, this one comes in at 12. Isn't there something that can be done long before this person comes in at 12 to get priority of service? I'm just asking.
it's a good question. So ordinarily, these 3 may not have walked into the emergency room, perhaps come in by ambulance, so they are already in the back. These 2 are the ones who would have walked in the general area. So they walk in, they get registered, and then they're directed to the triage nurse. Within the time they're directed to the triage nurse and seen, these have come in. So you're told now to go in the waiting area and have a seat. We'll get to you shortly. But these have come in after. So we have to attend to these first. So these 2 who are remaining in the emergency, in the waiting area, complained vehemently, well, I've been here for 3 hours and no one has seen me. Or I should say, we haven't gotten attended to. The A&E department in most hospitals have what I call a love-hate relationship. These two love it because they know they're going to stay 4 hours. They will see a doctor, get the prescription filled, and leave. But they hate it because they spend 4 hours. You understand what I mean? These have to love it because today they're all alive. Doctors came out in the day, took them up to theater, did a command performance, and today they're all alive. That is the scenario of the A&E experience that we, on a daily basis. So if the one takeaway is the accident and emergency department is not based on a first come, first served basis, but is based on the medical condition of the patient. And very intelligent nurses will then make a call as to who will be seen first, who will be seen second in the order of the medical condition. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. James, for that explanation. So from that, I want to find out what are boarded patients and how does that relate to the services at the complex?
We use the term boarded patients not in a derogatory way. For some time now, there are in excess of 25 patients who have been seen in the emergency room and cleared for admissions. The unfortunate reality of our story is that there are no beds. All our inpatient beds are fully occupied. So we have to now manage these patients in corridors, in cots, in the accident emergency department. It is not an acceptable position for us, but it is our reality. When we were at the Victoria Hospital, there were 150 beds. The OKUH has 120 beds. So already you're 30 beds short. So this is a very troubling issue for us. We've opened what is called a 7-bedded transition unit to be able to monitor patients with a certain condition. But that as it may, we continue to be faced with at least 25 patients on a daily basis just on cots waiting for beds. A couple of weeks ago, we were up to 50 patients. Believe it or not. We were up to 50 patients who were lying on cots all over the accident emergency department waiting for beds. The common thread among all of them, or I should say a significant amount of them, is the NCDs. Uncontrolled diabetes, uncontrolled hypertensives, heart problems, and to exacerbate the problems, you have patients presenting with injuries from accident and violence. This is the phenomenon called the boarded patient at the Millennium Heights Medical Complex and the Accident Emergency Department.
Okay. Could you share some insight into the secondary care hospital and the developments around the respiratory hospital, otherwise known as the Castrates Multipurpose Medical Facility?
Sure, Dave. So the government has decided to repurpose the former respiratory hospital as what is referred to as the Castrates Multipurpose Medical Facility. We like to see it as one facility, 3 services. One facility, 3 services. One of those services would be the setting up of what is called a Castrates Urban Clinic, as the chair spoke to earlier on. The second would be an urgent center that will take care of patients presenting up to midnight with certain types of condition. And the third facility, which we have been asked to develop and manage, is the secondary care hospital comprising of 31 beds and the infectious disease wing. We are currently taking steps to upgrade the rooms. We're starting with 12 beds. These beds are we are about 80% completed, and very shortly we will then make those facilities available to the public. Those facilities will have not only 31 beds, they will have 2 operating theaters, we'll have 2 ICUs, we'll have a satellite laboratory, and we'll also have basic imaging facilities. I want to say to the public that the term secondary is not second-class care. In our science, we speak to primary, secondary, and tertiary care. Secondary care is just simply a different level of care that we will provide to patients. In other words, it's a level of care where patients are not sick enough that they should be in a tertiary care setting, but still sick enough that they need to be monitored. And so we were able to transfer patients from OKU to this facility and thereby free up beds to be able to accept some of the patients in the emergency department. So this slide gives you a sense of the configuration. As I mentioned earlier on, we will have 31 beds, we'll have X-ray labs, dispensing, we'll have 2 ICUs and 2 operating theaters. Let me at this point say that the 2 operating theaters, we intend to use those theaters to provide opportunities for surgeons in the private sector to be able to use these facilities in a private capacity. We will therefore provide what we call admitting privileges to surgeons who can then come in, pay for the use of the theaters, operate in the theaters, and follow those patients post-op. What this is doing is expanding capacity in the country to allow surgeons to be able to have an opportunity to practice the trade. In so doing, we hope to keep the cost of healthcare at a manageable level. So that is a feature of the secondary care hospital that we are very happy to develop as part of the secondary care facility. Where we are today, we've since transitioned staff. 85 staff have been transitioned to us. Our officer in charge has been installed. We're now occupying the chest wing because we've moved 7 patients up to the chest wing to make sure that we could start occupying and to alleviate the problems that we have in the emergency room. We believe by mid-November, we should be in a position to commission the first 12 beds with dispensing services to be able to start moving patients from OKEUH to the secondary care hospital. Thank you.
How does the complex prioritize service quality, enhancement for the St. Lucian population and for other end users?
Well, the secondary care facility will certainly open up opportunities to give us some additional beds, 31 beds. Will it solve the problem with bed management for us? Perhaps not in the long term, because we still have the phenomena of non-communicable diseases presenting to us, and therefore, unless there's an issue, unless we begin to see more decisive steps taken to deal with the NCDs at the primary care level, we're still going to have the bed management problem. But having said that, we recognize that our Ministry of Health have taken concerted efforts to try to improve the capacity and access to care at the primary care level. And we hope that those initiatives will certainly redound to reducing the impact on our tertiary care facility.
Thank you. Now, there's a global trend towards people-centered care. What is MHMC's perspective on this, and how would the complex plan to incorporate people-centered care into its model as it moves forward?
All right, so the people-centered care is a model that's been adopted by World Health Organization, and this is the definition. The key words here is that people must be participants in and beneficiaries of the health care. Right? That is the principle. That's the principle behind it. In that care must be delivered now in partnership with patients and the family, and with inputs of patients and the family. So it involves a much more discursive arrangement in developing, in implementing care between those of us who provide care and those who are receiving care. It involves a much more engaging and enlightening type of engagement to make sure that patients are participants in the healthcare, as opposed to being very passive in the way care is provided to them. It is providing them with a voice in the way care is provided to them. So we've adopted this as part of certainly our model for developing quality improvements within the public health system. It is indeed the bedrock of the very accreditation process that we've embarked on, and we believe that it can only be down to better patient care and overall improvement to the quality of care we provide to our patients.
And my final question to you this evening, where does the Millennium Heights Medical Complex currently stand? Could you outline some of the steps and the plans now and for the immediate future?
Thank you, Dave. My final comment is that in reviewing where we are today, we're making some commitments to the people of St. Lucia. As I mentioned earlier on, $90 million is spent today on providing the package of services to the population. So first and foremost, we will continue to try to improve the patient experience by looking at satisfaction surveys, engaging our populations, having town hall meetings of this kind, to hear your views about the ways in which we could better serve you. We know there has been a vexing issue of not being able to provide drugs to patients on an outpatient basis. We have not advertised it, but word seems to be getting out. Since we've launched the reopening of our outpatient clinics, in July, we filled about 317 prescriptions. As of September, we're up to 1,200 prescriptions. So we in fact have opened back our outpatient dispensing so that prescriptions can be filled at the hospital. I mentioned earlier on the question of admitting privileges to surgeons. This will open up opportunities for surgeons to have another avenue for providing surgical interventions to private patients. We'll continue to work on waiting times in our accident emergency department. We will ensure the fully commissioning of the secondary care hospital, and we will, of course, strengthen our billings, admissions, and collections function. Very shortly, we'll be establishing a patient community and advocacy committee, and this would be an independent committee that would represent the voice of the public. Its composition may involve past patients, involve civil society, NGOs, and other interested groups who will form this committee to be able to represent the voice of the population. All of this is aligned to the very people-centered care approach and the view towards gleaning from different avenues the patient experience.
Thank you very much for that. As you, our audience, know, we are live on Facebook and on YouTube. So we have a few questions from online, and we're at the point of the question and answer segment of this presentation. So my question to you now, my audience members, is if you have any questions, we have a mic to the front. Feel free to come up or ask your questions from where you sit, and CEO will be very happy to respond. One of the questions coming from online to get the ball rolling is, can you provide an in-depth analysis of our medical report, particularly regarding the timeliness? Okay, Dr. Charles, would you care to respond? Leanne, we have a mic to the front for Dr. Charles on the chair. Yeah.
Good evening, everyone. So, all patients have access to the medical records and to reports that summarize their stay in the hospital with us. If you are interested in a medical report or a summary of your care at the hospital, you simply need to present to the reception desk at OKEU Hospital, the information and reception desk, where you can fill out a form which includes signing so that we know that we're giving the report to the owner of the information. So if you, Dave, want a report, you would have to come in, present your ID, and sign a consent for release of that report. If you cannot come in, you would have to photocopy your ID or send your actual ID with a letter of release for someone to collect it on your behalf. Medical reports take up to 4 weeks to be prepared. Often, majority of the time, they're ready before that, but because some can be extremely comprehensive and require quite a bit of time to prepare, for instance, someone who's had a very long stay, we give the time of 4 weeks. Again, majority of the time, they're ready within 2 weeks, but up to 4 weeks, and you would have your medical report. There is a small fee for preparation of the report, which can also be taken care of when you come to the hospital.
Thank you so much, Dr. Charles. That was Lisa Charles. She is one of the members of our board of directors, and also Mr. Charles, Mervyn Joseph, from the Castries Central community, Castries South community. Leanne is going to give you the mic. Well, we need to get it on the record, so that's why. No, we tried it. It didn't work last time.
Okay,
Yes.
sorry. The Castries Center, I can't remember what is the name.
The health center.
Is it the former VH, or is it in
Okay.
this one? The Castries Multipurpose Medical Facility. Can
Right.
you just refresh my memory? What location is this?
So this was what is referred to as the respiratory hospital, the
Which
entire
is
complex.
the Victoria Hospital.
Yes.
Okay.
So-
So my question is based on this. Is it absolutely necessary, or if you can explain to the listening public why it's necessary to say secondary care? The reason I'm asking is because persons may be listening and wonder, okay, so those at OKU are the high class, and now you want me to go to the low class area. What is the reason for putting that word? Why can't it just stay as, okay, Castries Multipurpose Center Medical Care Wing? What is the reason for the secondary care?
Right. Very, very good question. So the entire, what you refer to as Victoria Hospital, is being repurposed as what is called the Castries Multipurpose Medical Facility. It's one facility with 3 services. 2 of the services will be managed by the Ministry of Health, and one of the facility, the secondary care hospital, will be managed by the Millennium Heights Medical Complex. The term secondary is in the science of health facilities, refers to as the second tier of care. So there's primary care, which is at the polyclinics and health centers. From primary, you move to secondary care, which is what we're seeking to address here. And then from secondary, the highest level of care is what is called tertiary care. So I want to repeat again, the term secondary does not mean it is second-class care or care for poor people. The terminology is just simply a different level of care relative to the disease, the condition that patients present. This facility, as I mentioned earlier on, will comprise of 31 beds, 2 operating theaters, 2 ICUs, a satellite laboratory, and imaging services. That by no means of imagination could be seen as a second-class care. It is a fully fledged secondary care hospital. In fact, if you want to make a comparison, it is in the same scope of service as St. Jude's. It is in the same scope and category of service as the St. Jude's facility. So this is the explanation for it. The secondary care is simply a different level of care. So our position is that palliative care, patients to rehabilitation, patients who are relatively stable at the tertiary care hospital, we will then transfer them to this secondary care for what we call continuity of care. These patients may remain there for another maybe 2 or 3 days, and then they're discharged. But in so doing, it frees up the beds at the tertiary care level so that the boarded patients I mentioned earlier on can now have beds to occupy at the tertiary care facility. So this So the secondary care facility, if you will, opens up, and it's like an escape valve. So the level of constipation that we have in our accident emergency department, where we can't move patients to beds because there are no beds, with these extra beds, we have the opportunity now to move some of those patients into that facility, thereby freeing up beds at the tertiary care so that the boarded patients in A&E can then find beds.
Okay, Doc, thank you. I understood what it meant. However, I was just saying for the listening public who may have or did not understand it because you didn't touch on it a bit. I have 2 questions. I guess you'll answer 2 more. The first one is the wait time at VH previously, now OKU, seemed to be extensively long. What, I'm not sure if it was addressed before I got in, what are the plans for management of OKU to address this matter, 1? And then 2, Dr. Charles just indicated there's a fee for documents, records that are going to be prepared. I believe the Prime Minister just introduced that 2.5% extra on everybody's bill. Would that be able to eliminate that, or the extra cost is just an extra assistance for the running of the hospital?
All right, so let me see if I can answer the last one first. From what we've observed, government is clearly taking a decision to embrace universal health coverage to ensure that every single citizen of St. Lucia has access to care that the country can afford. They've started with what is called the maternal and child health. So women in pregnancy can get an ultrasound free of cost, and they could get medication as well free of cost. There's what is called the performance-based financing scheme, where all diabetics and hypertensive can receive medications free, as well as laboratory investigation, free of cost. Our take on the introduction of the 2.5% levy is that this fund is supposed to be for 2 purposes, one part for health and part for security. We understand that these funds are going to be held in an escrow account for the intended purpose. As to how much of that will come to the health system and by extension the Millennium Heights Medical Complex, we are not privy to that discussion. All we know is that there's these funds that are being held in a restricted account for the benefit of the health system and for meeting security concerns. it is our belief that this gradual approach to the implementation of a comprehensive universal health coverage package for the population is a novel and good approach. We've seen many countries in the developed world, South Korea, Bermuda, and others, have taken such a gradual approach and have been able to demonstrate marked success in the expansion of access to care to the population. So that is the response I have on the 2.5% security, health and security levy. Yeah?
And I think he was
First
also
part.
alluding to
The wait
what,
times.
before the wait times, Dr. Charles's minimal fee, which would not be really impacted by that 2.5%, because it's more about printing, photocopying, that kind of thing. A director of clinical services, yes? No. It would impact. Okay. Okay.
Yeah, bear in mind that we run a socialized model of healthcare. So when we talk about fees at the hospital, these are fees that are over 2.5, almost 3 decades old. These fees bear no relationship to the cost of services. So when we ask the population to pay these token fees, it is just to allow us to sustain what we're now providing to you. We are not increasing the fees at all. We cannot. The law precludes us from doing it. To increase the fees, there's a process that has to go through to cabinet, onto parliament, and fees are debated. So what we're seeking to do is to strengthen our collection mechanism and to appeal to public spiritedness, to appeal to the population's sense of social responsibility, to pay token fees. You're getting a fairly good package of service. So the fees that we have bears no reflection to the actual cost to deliver the service. This is why when UHC comes into being, Universal Health Coverage comes into being, the hospitals for the first time will be able now to raise an invoice, submit it to the payer, and then we could now get reimbursed for the services we provide with the true cost of services. This is why it's so important not only to improve access, but to improve the funding of our public health systems in the country.
And the wait time?
And the wait time. What are the plans?
Miss Louise, Dr. Charles, to answer the wait times.
Okay, thank you for the question. The wait times in accident and emergency, and we've looked at them in great detail, are compounded by our borders, the extensive number of patients waiting for beds. But I want to just take the moment to commend the A&E team. We have a tremendously competent and dedicated A&E team led by Dr. Bernadette Joseph Labadie. Competent, dedicated nursing and physician team supported by our clinical support services that are working very hard to address the issues that you raise. We have an exceptionally good time from arrival to actually seeing a physician. I want the public to understand that our patients, however, are coming in much sicker. We're actually seeing less patients in 2023 than we saw in 2005, in 2010, and even in 2012. Our patients, though, who are coming to the emergency room are sicker and require much more extended treatment. So the time to see and turn over a single patient in the ER has almost doubled over the last 10 years. And that speaks a lot to the level of chronic diseases, chronic non-communicable diseases that we have out there, the diabetes and the hypertension. So patients are coming in sicker. They're requiring a lot more treatment care, x-rays, labs, and even attention from the doctor. And we are faced with, in addition to that, having an A&E that is overcrowded with admitted patients because of our bed problem. So those are some of the major contributing factors to the wait time once you get into A&E. You know, mom or parent comes in with a stroke and they're in A&E for 6-8 hours waiting for all the labs, all the x-rays, all the treatments, and then even waiting a further 12, sometimes 24, sometimes 2 days to get a bed, which is very frustrating. I completely understand how frustrating that is to the public. So again, as we look at the secondary healthcare, the secondary hospital, and opening up additional beds, we really hope to sort of relieve that compression in A&E.
Mr. Cyril?
Thank you very much, and let me say again, kudos to you, Doc, and your team for bringing the town hall meeting. I think it's way overdue, and I think it's a step in the right direction when it comes to educating the public. My first question would be, one of your slides, I don't know, Dave, if we could go back to it. It says, I think, if I heard correctly, 90 million, and that was annually to run the hospital, the complex rather. 90 million, right? Yes. Yes, 90 point something million dollars to run a facility like that. And I was just asking or wondering, when it comes, I noticed under the strategic plan, enhancing collection, right? So I'm saying to myself, for argument's sake, I had an accident on a motorbike, broke my leg. I came in, I paid the $20, my bills, I guess, for x-rays, the costs, medication, whatever, probably run up to $1,500. And I am there maybe a week, 2, I guess, lunch, breakfast, dinner, everything, my meals comes with that, because you'll not let me starve. And I'm supposed to pay that bill, but I do not have a black cent. And then I call Bishop, Bishop has nothing. I call my mother, she has nothing. And then I agree to have maybe a plan. I say, you know what, guys, maybe I could bring $50 every week or every month. That's how I'll be able to pay. But I never show up. But the other leg broke. And I'm now coming in, and you're already in the red with me, 1.5, and I'm coming in to take treatment again. And I run up another 1.5. I was just curious. It was one of the scenarios that run through my mind. Running a hospital at 90 million annually, how does the hospital finance those, you know, an operation like that? You know, how do you really run it? Because from a layman's term, I am saying we heard the stories at VH, where I mean, the amount of monies that are out there, persons just, you know, and you cannot go and hold somebody by the neck to pay, you know. So I would like some light, if any light could be shone on that. And my second question is there an effort being made, or what do you think, I would ask Doc, could be done when it comes to, we keep hearing primary health care, we keep hearing go to the primary health care, the polyclinic, and then we have the complex. So if I'm correct, those two are not, so in other words, the complex do not run the primary health care, right? If I'm correct, the complex is responsible for the complex, those who fall under the umbrella, which is of course wellness, which is secondary health care. What is in the pipeline to have them in sync? Because I'm thinking, you're saying go to the health center, but to my knowledge, primary health care is not 24 hours. And then even if when you tell me go there, by 10 o'clock, can I go to the health center? No. So I still find myself at triage. So what is the discussion in that direction? I think it has to be one way or the other, it has to be raised, or it has to be taken into consideration. Because if we are saying we need to strengthen what is happening there, to me, it makes no sense trying to make those full steps forward if we cannot address the basic ones, which is like having that linkage. And of course, I might take one step in saying DigiGov. So if I'm at the health center, there's no reason for me to be walking with a little book to come and say, well, a doctor referenced me here, here's a referral. It should be brought up in the system automatically. I mean, I'm checked in, my information is brought up, and then I do not have to present a book or referral or whatnot, because we did speak of IT and the DigiGov. I mean, what is the discussion when it comes to the issues that I've raised?
So, Mr. English, you want to take the first part? So he has come in, run up a bill, and now he has come back and run up another bill.
Okay. So the scenario you described is whilst unique, is not abnormal, because we do have reoccurring situations where patients would have an outstanding amount and they would have come back again for care, and we would have to accommodate that patient. And I say accommodate because I don't want it to feel that we turn anybody away. We are in partnership with the government to execute a particular policy. And the government's policy is to provide health care for all citizens. So whilst we would do exactly what you said earlier, which is to put you in a payment plan and ensure that we chase that payment plan up on a month-by-month basis, once you come back to the facility and you have a need, our obligation, our responsibility is to provide health care to you, and especially if it is in a situation where it saves lives. But we are not in the business of turning away patients. We are not in the business of strangling patients to pay. We are really in the business of providing health care to every citizen in St. Lucia. So when you have a situation like what you described, we would have to still take care of that patient, nurture them back to health so they could go back home to their families, and then the responsibility of the finance team, which I head, would be to exercise all possible measures subsequent to that to collect on that outstanding amount. But our focus and our responsibility is healthcare, and healthcare for every citizen. All right?
The second part of his question deals with the connection between MHMC and primary care. Primary care not being open at late evenings. Where does someone go with an emergency? And what are the strategies or efforts in place for technologicalized systems that people do not have to necessarily come with a referral?
Very, very good question. In reforming our public health systems, there are two approaches that could be taken. One is to start with hospital reforms, because the view is that the hospitals are your largest driver of cost, and it's the area where you have the highest level of inefficiency. So the predominant model we've seen within recent times is to set up hospital reforms. So the Millennium Heights Medical Complex is a model of governance that is dealing with hospital reforms. The second model is a more integrated model that speaks to health authorities that will manage both primary care, secondary care, and tertiary care in an integrated facility. What the latter one does for our public health is to allow for an easier movement of patients between primary, secondary, and tertiary care because they're under one governance structure. If the polyclinic network were under the Millennium Heights Medical Complex today, our board and our management team could decide we will run our polyclinics 24/7 and put the resources in place to make sure it happens. that is outside of our control, because the entire primary care network is not part of us. The unfortunate reality with that approach is that because we're not able to influence discharge planning, for instance, and the seamless movements between what we call the continuum of care, primary care to hospital, hospital to primary care, there's a disconnect. And therefore, the 25% of the patients who present to our emergency room for non-urgent care are factors that are outside of our control. Because if the primary care network were under us, we could put systems in place to make sure that we have the diagnostics out there, the doctors and the nurses and the facilities to be able to manage those patients out there. So there are drawbacks between both models. And from my observation, the hospital reform model creates a bigger headache for the public health system. Because while you have, in the case of the Millennium Medical Complex, a board and a management team that is fairly nimble and could respond to the needs of the local environment, all of that is taking place with the sacrifice of the integration between primary care and ourselves. So if there is not the commensurate level of energy and effort to strengthen primary care networks, 90 million is going to be too small. Covey says, begin with the end in mind. If we've seen, as Dr. Charles raised earlier on, sicker patients presenting to emergency rooms with the NCDs, it means significantly more needs to be done at the primary care level to be able to affect that kind of phenomena. We're not taken away from the fact that the ministry is doing a tremendous amount of work to strengthen its primary care networks. Could more be done? Perhaps so, yes. And maybe the time has come for us to now look carefully at how we deliver our services with the interest of the patient in mind. We are routinely conducting satisfaction surveys because we want to understand the concerns of our constituents to be able to make changes to improve their lives. We hope that the similar approach is being done at the primary care network, where similar meetings of this kind could be held with the constituents in the catchment area to speak to the population about what are the services we're providing and how happy they are about the services. We cannot speak to primary care, but this type of engagement is what our board will support, and it is the feedback that we receive from meetings of this kind that will help us to improve what we do, and so that it doesn't become a self-serving sort of exercise of delivery, but is really truly a people-centered approach with participation in and with input from all the constituents that receive care at the hospital.
Thank you very much for that. The gentleman.
I must say, Doc, your presentation tonight was very profound. I learned so much. Actually, I'm one of those who have gone to the VH and complain about the medical services. At times you go there at a certain time, like you rightly said in the presentation. You maybe go around between 10 o'clock, what have you, and sometimes you leave all 3 o'clock. Sometimes you'd have to end up going even walking for your lunch as well, because you know the hours are very long. The point I want to make is this. With the advance of technology right now, where we are presently, I was wondering, and probably a suggestion I'd like to probably make here, right? Why don't we have those video presentations, like just like what you had tonight there, while persons are waiting in the emergency rooms. Why don't we make these presentations available to them so at least persons can know what you guys go through at the complex, so they could be more well informed. So avoid all those complaints that we have right. We have. The ball is in your court.
I can't help but commend you for that recommendation. You really ought to be commended for it, because we've just brought our communications executive on board. And one of the areas that he's tasked with is that wherever we have spaces with gathering persons, and there's an LCD, we will run health promotional themes on diabetes, hypertension, cancers. We'll also be able to run information on those screens on how to access and use the emergency room, how to access outpatient clinic, as a way of providing information to our publics. We're not doing very well at that. And this is one of the things we'll bring on board, and I'm glad you raised it, because it will be a feature of how we intend to promote not only health and wellness within our hospital, but also promote the services we provide and how to access the services. There's still a fair amount of misinformation, misunderstanding about how to access services at the hospital. So we really have to ramp up our outreach programs. We have to ramp up internally for all the patients, visitors, and staff who come to the facility. How do we communicate with them in a way that provides information that will allow them to make informed decisions about the care to be provided to them? The example you give is the emergency department. Persons come in and they sit in the waiting area, and they just sit there staring. There's nothing. There's nothing. What if you had the LCD, the monitor there, and they're able to see, information about health promotion, diabetes, hypertension, heart problems, eye disease, cancers, prostate health. So while they're there, it becomes an engaging exercise. I've challenged my dietitian nutritionist that on certain days when we have our outpatient clinics, go to the clinic and talk to have a discussion with patients on healthy eating and diets. What constitutes portion control? What are good and bad foods to eat? So we have to do a lot more. One might argue this is primary care. But the issue here is that wherever we have persons, where we have a captive audience, we must use that opportunity to educate our populations about care. All I've just mentioned here ought to be in the primary care network. But we are taking a decisive action to bring primary care within the hospital setting. I expect within another month or so, we'll begin to see some of that bearing fruit, and you'll be happy to see, when you come to an emergency room, you'll begin to see health promotional material being run on the LCD monitors to provide information about care and treatment in various disease conditions. Even the simple fact of an announcement on the LCD that says average waiting time is now 4 hours. So you could decide if you want to remain in the emergency room with runny nose for 4 hours, or you could decide to go to your primary care network. These are the kind of information our publics want to hear and they want to see. But admittedly, we do it, but we need to do a lot more of it to be more engaging. Thank you.
Anyone else from the audience? Okay, so my final question to you is on mental, or we have?
Yes, Doc, that one would be short and sweet. I guess with all what that is being discussed here right now, as it relates to HR and customer service, I mean, we've heard about the stories. We know what it is. When it comes to treatment, when it comes with all what that is going on here right now, and we're speaking of at a facility, you would agree with me, if the customer service doesn't match it, it's worthless or it's pointless. What is being done, I guess somebody from HR or Doc might be telling me, in that same regard, what is being done to boost up our customer service at the complex?
Excellent question, Mr. Cook. Our Human Resource Department must invest a tremendous amount of resources in improving our interaction with our frontline, with our patients. It starts with our reception. For those who have come to the hospital within recent times, you have seen we've done some upgrades to the main entrance to make it a lot more inviting and appealing. But we must do better with respect to our interface with our public. All right? We want our publics to feel empowered, that any concern, commendation, or complaints that they have, I call it the 3 C's, concerns, complaints, and commendations. They could lodge that with our quality department. The email is complaints@mhmc.lc. We would like to hear from you. We say to the public that your current and future care will never be compromised, so fear not. We're soon to set up the patient advisory committee, which will be another voice that if you have concerns, you could represent your concerns to that committee and they will pass it on to us. So yes, you're right, customer service training is a must for all frontline employees, whether it be in the accident and emergency department, at the outpatient clinics, and even on our wards. Until such time that becomes infectious, right? In spite of the difficult challenge that we have, it means the ordinarily good care that we provide becomes diluted by poor customer service. So that must become a very important feature of the very people-centered care approach that we seek to launch, improving the customer happiness. This is one of the few hospitals that do in fact have a business intelligence software that tracks how happy patients are with the service. Many hospitals will conduct a satisfaction survey maybe once a year, once every 2 years. But we are actually tracking that every single day and every single month. Can we do more? Certainly we can. Very shortly, we will be now moving to our next phase of it by placing QR codes at every single bedside. And patients with a smartphone can then access the QR code and fill in the information on the complaints so that we strengthen the anonymity of how you see the services being provided without the fear that your future care will be compromised. So we're trying to find different ways in which we could engage our population to be in a better position to serve you. All right, but customer service is taken on board, and I really thank you for that recommendation.
Okay, and our final question regarding mental wellness. It says in recent years, mental wellness has gained prominence and wellness programs due to unprecedented levels of depression, anxiety, stress, sleep issues, and more. What policies and actions has MHMC developed to work with communities in response to these challenges? I think Sister Perrott has stepped out. So, Dr. Charles?
So the question's quite timely. We just completed a 3-day engagement facilitated by PAHO, where we brought community mental health services together with the mental health service offerings at the National Mental Wellness Center. And across the board, both sides of the fence stressed that partnership between community health services and the National Mental Wellness Center, or the tertiary care side of mental health, is critical. Many of the issues that you raise, again, are issues that we would like to see addressed aggressively in the primary health care setting. So everyone who walks through the door in any of our wellness centers should be asked about mood, how they're feeling, what level of stressors do they have at home or at school if they're a child. And I'm aware that the primary health service is actively pursuing a child health program in the schools. So it must start at that level, but supporting each other, the community supporting us at mental wellness and mental wellness supporting community health services, dialoguing about our patients so that when we refer one to the other or the other back to mental wellness, that we know how they've been doing in community, that community knows how they've been doing at the hospital. So really partnership, dialogue, a lot more of a cohesive approach is what we're hoping for. And we will be developing a work plan out of that workshop to strengthen that cooperation between the two.
Thank you very much, Director Charles. Dr. Charles is again the Director of Clinical Services at MHMC. So we now come to the end of our program. We call on the wonderful Miss Louise to give a vote of thanks to everyone who attended and participated. You would notice behind me is a Courts Business Solutions sign. Court St. Lucia did grace us with loaning us this set that you see here this evening for a little difference in how we present these community meetings. So we just want to thank them and acknowledge them for this beautiful living room set that you see here. So if you want anything from the stage, you can go down to Courts. All right, Ms. Louise?
Thank you, Mr. Charles. So with that said, we would wish to take this opportunity to thank Courts Unicommerce St. Lucia for the furniture set you see up here, as he just mentioned. Also would like to thank the chairperson, Mrs. Joanna Reynolds Atherton, our Chief Executive Officer, Dr. Dexter James. We have Director of Finance and Budgeting, Mr. Roger Inglis, Director of Clinical Services, Dr. Lisa Charles, Sister Isabel Perrott, Deputy Director of Nursing Services. We also have our HR consultant, Mrs. Yuriska Chandler, our Health Services Manager, Ms. Jennifer Forrester, our Deputy Manager of Employee Engagement, Rewards and Recognition, Ms. Evelyn Alcid, again, Pastor Clement Edward of the New Jerusalem Church, Mr. Carlton Cox Cyril for his performance today, sorry about that, Mr. Sean Masley and Jeremiah Joseph for tech and streaming services, and of course to our MHMC team members who assisted and attended this evening's session, and to the public and everybody who came out today and for the questions asked. We'd like to thank you so much for coming. Good evening.
Thank you very much, Ms. Louise, and thank you all for coming out. We wish you a safe trip home, and we have some little tokens of appreciation for